Now, the Hunt Palmer Show.
A magic beyond anything you could ever imagine.
You are now listening to the Hunt Palmer Show. Brought to you by Sagrera Farms on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge. Locking down the middle of the day.
You really think that's the best idea?
Live from the Raising Cane studio. This is Hunt Palmer.
It's quite a piece of work.
Welcome in. Hunt Palmer coming to you from the Raising Cane studio downtown in the capital city on this Thursday, working towards the weekend, brought to you by Sagrera Farms Premium Angus Beef. Jordan Kitchens, Cassie Spazzali back there on the ones and twos, fired up you were here with us. And plenty to do here on this Thursday. LSU back on the hardwood tonight. Get a little bit of a preview of that much later on in this hour. Andrew Ellis from Inside Arkansas is going to be here in 15 minutes. Talk about this game and what the energy level is up there on the Hill. I got a feeling they're kind of looking towards John Calipari's team. Certainly Dave Van Horn's team always present there in Arkansas. What about this football team that Bobby Petrino is leading into Baton Rouge? We'll talk to Andrew Ellis about it in 15 minutes. Saints offensive line is underperforming. Ross Jackson wrote about it. I'm going to talk about it a little bit later on in this hour. I do want to talk about Arkansas, specifically one player on their terrible defense that is very much not terrible. We'll talk about that at 2 o'clock. Chris Blair will be with us, Luke Johnson as well. So plenty to do. Log us in. We'll start things the way we do every day with our Genesis opening drive.
It's time for Hunt's opening drive, presented by Genesis of Baton Rouge.
Our first segment today is going to have some similarities to one of our segments yesterday. Yesterday, I dove into some characteristics that I was looking for in LSU's next football coach. I talked about commitment, talked about embracing the new rules in the world that college football is, talked about age, talked about expertise on one side of the ball. There were plenty of things that I talked about over the course of that segment as an overview. I want to drill down deeper into one of those bullet points today. So same topic, just more in depth on one bullet point. And it is that expertise on one side of the football for the next coach. When Nick Saban left after the 2004 season, his defense walked out the door with it. And LSU's had 3 head coaches since then, starting in 2005 with Les Miles, Ed Orgeron taking over in 2017, and Brian Kelly in 2022. And what you saw from those 3 was a dependence on coordinators on both sides of the ball. Because you don't look at Les Miles, and yeah, you might go, well, offensive line guy, run the football. But like, was it his scheme? No, and it certainly wasn't an identity of the program in a positive manner if you are going to lean that way. Ed Orgeron was never a defensive coordinator, didn't have a scheme that he wanted to play. Brian Kelly has been a defensive coordinator in his time and certainly does get credit for some of the offensive philosophies that he's brought with him place to place. But these guys are over the top of the program when they run it, and they're very dependent on the coordinators. I'll give you the examples. You know them, but like Les Miles had Jimbo Fisher, and LSU scored some points. And then he got Gary Croton, and LSU did score some points, and then that fizzled. And then you had the situation where Steve Kragthorpe came in, and he got sick, so he had to step aside, and Greg Stadrala did okay, but then it kind of faded with him, and then they brought in Cam Cameron, and it was a disaster. And you rode this roller coaster trying to find your offensive coordinator, and the same thing was true on the defensive side. He started with Bo Pelini, and that was great. They won a championship, but Pelini left for Nebraska, and he elevated Bradley Del Pivido and Doug Mallory, and they couldn't do anything on defense. That 2008 defense was just awful. And it fell off a cliff because you didn't have Pelini there. So they went and hired John Chavis, and that was great. And then he left, and they went and hired Dave Aranda, and that was great, as long as you had the right coordinator in place. But you're riding the volatile swings of misses at coordinator, and Cam Cameron in the Malvito, if you want to use a bad phrase from that time. Like, if you got a bad coordinator, things went terribly. And then the same thing is true for Ed Orgeron when he got here. He wanted Lane Kiffin. Well, that didn't happen, so they got Matt Canada, and those two hated each other. So it didn't go well. And Ed Orgeron told him at halftime of the Troy game, don't run any more motions, which is like the main piece of a Matt Canada offense. Now, they got Steve Ensminger in place, and Joe Brady came in, and they made magic, but then Joe Brady left, and Steve Ensminger said, I'm out of here. Well, they ended up without a coordinator, like, well, Jake Peets, you can run the offense. Well, that didn't work. Jake Peets doesn't know how to run an offense. He just knew Joe Brady, so they hired him. On the defensive side, you had Dave Aranda, left over from Les Miles. Everything was great when Aranda was here. Well, he left for Baylor, and you hired Pelini, and it was terrible. So he left, fired him, and then you couldn't find a defensive coordinator. So you went and got Durante Jones, who hadn't called a defense in a decade and hasn't called one since he left LSU. Now, he did okay at the end of that season, but, you were dependent on something you couldn't make happen. Brian Kelly, y'all know that story. Denbrock setting records. Sloan, it fell apart. Matt House, awful. Got Blake Baker, things got better, but the offense had fallen. See what I'm saying? There's just so much volatility. I would like the next coach to take away 50% of that volatility. And this is one of those deals where I get the notebook out and I start going through and I go, okay, this is what I think in my head. What do the numbers tell me? And I started going through some very household names in college football. Start with Lane Kiffin. Lane Kiffin on offense at Ole Miss. Total offense in the nation, not the SEC, in the nation. This year, 4th. Last year, 2nd. 2023, 13th. 2022, 8th. 2021, 6th. That's 4 top 8 offenses nationally and the one, quote-unquote, off-year 13th in the nation. It doesn't matter who they have as a defensive coordinator. It doesn't matter who they have, Charlie Weiss Jr. As long as Lane Kiffin's there, they're going to be a top 10 offense in the nation. Book it. Ryan Day, in terms of scoring offense at Ohio State since he's taken over. There's been 9 seasons. Top 12 in the nation in scoring offense, 7 out of those 9 years. They had one dip in 2023. They were 45th. Other than that, 18th, 12th, 2nd, 1st, 11th, 3rd, 8th, 6th. No matter what. Quarterbacks come and go. Offensive linemen come and go. Sometimes you have Jeremiah Smith. Sometimes you have Emeka Ibuka. Sometimes, it doesn't matter. You got Jackson Smith and Jigba. You're going to be in a top 15, top 10 in scoring offense every year with Brian Day as your offensive coordinator, as your head coach. I can go to Mike Elko. He's at Texas A&M right now. And I mentioned this stat yesterday, but I wanted to go back and look year over year. I know what they are this year. I know third down defense, Mike Elko, this year, they're first in the nation. Best in the country on third down. I watched with my own 2 eyes in Tiger Stadium. So I wanted to go, okay, well, what does that look like in his time at Texas A&M calling defenses? Because, he's a defensive coordinator for Jimbo Fisher. Well, last year, in his first year, 33rd. Certainly not bad, but not elite of the elite. But then you go back to his time as defensive coordinator in 2021, 2019, 18. 13th, 23rd, 15th, 9th. Basically, you take out his first year as a head coach when he inherits the roster, and you look at what he's developed and recruited in those 4 years. 1st, 13th, 23rd, 15th, 9th. You're going to be really good on third down when Mike Elko is calling your defense. You're going to be really good on third down. It's an identity that he takes pride in, that they're good at every single year. And he can have an offensive coordinator come and go, and you recruit this guy and that guy. And it's just really good every year because that's his side of the ball. He takes care of that. Now, I'm obviously looking right now. Those are all playoff teams, but it doesn't even mean playoff teams this year. I could point to Josh Heupel. And I know he hasn't won anything of significance at Tennessee. They never beat Georgia. They haven't played for the SEC championship. They got blown out in the playoffs last year. I get it, but keep in mind that Tennessee, for 15 years, post-Fulmer, stunk. Irrelevant, couldn't figure it out. Dooley, Pruitt, Butch Jones, whatever. Not good enough. But Heupel comes in, and no matter what, he's had a bunch of quarterbacks, bunch of running backs, bunch of offensive lines. In terms of rushing offense, you look at, in his 5 years, where Tennessee is ranked in rushing offense. This year, they're 7th in the league. I'll get to something in a second, because that's not great, right? Last year, 1st. The year before that, 1st. The year before that, 2022, 6th. Middle of the pack. The year before that, 3rd. So in 5 years, rushing offense, 1st, 3rd, and then a 7th and a 6th. Those 7th and 6th years literally led the SEC in passing. So in 4 of Heupel's 5 years, they have been number 1, not top 5, number 1 in the SEC in either rushing or passing. No matter what happens there, that's the identity program. We got it. Now, you could say, well, what have they won? Why would I want that? Well, there's something to be said for establishing a baseline and being really good at it. And Josh Heupel has done that, and LSU's been missing that. Let me look at two other examples here. It's a completely different world, but you'll understand the point that I'm making. Y'all know how low the lows go at Mississippi State. Like, they go really low. Sylvester Croom was 10-30 in SEC games at State. They have currently lost 17 of 18 league games. If you're not on top of your stuff at Mississippi State, the bottom can fall out in a hurry. You know who the bottom never fell out on? Dan Mullen and Mike Leach. Why? Because they had their offense. Now, Mullen had really good defensive linemen. Absolutely, no question about it. I'm not suggesting that all of Mullen's success is on his offense, but it is his offense, and they were good on offense. And you look at Dan Mullen at his time at Mississippi State, he was 33-39 in league games. Now, that doesn't sound good, but they've lost 17 of 18 right now. Kroom lost everything, 0-8. Never happened under Mullen. They won 3 or more SEC games in 8 of 9 years. 3-5 at worst, 8 of 9 years. Mike Leach was 11-14 in league games. You look at the post-COVID years 2 and 3 for him, they were 4-4 in the league both years. Because they established a baseline. That's the identity of the program. It's never going away. I don't have to rely on coordinators to make that happen. I make it happen. Because guess what happens with coordinators? They either get head coaching jobs because they're doing a great job, or you fire them because it falls apart. If you have one side of the ball that is yours, that you can take ownership in, that is consistent in your program, it establishes a baseline. And in a place like LSU, I want that because Les didn't have it, and O didn't have it, and Kelly didn't have it. Now, it is easier said than done. It's easier said than done. Auburn just hired a guy 3 years ago who has scored points everywhere he's ever been, and Hugh Freeze couldn't do anything on offense. Couldn't do anything. Billy Napier's an offensive guy. Went to Florida. Their offense is awful. Fired. Dave Aranda went to Baylor. I bet you weren't completely aware of this. In his time at Baylor the last 2 years, Baylor's been in the bottom half of the Big 12 in defense. You would have thought hiring him from Baylor, well, they might not win. I don't know. I don't know if he can recruit. I don't know if he can get players to Waco. I don't know what they'll do on offense. But that defense, I promise you, they'll be good on defense. And they're not good on defense. They're bad on defense. So it's not a fail-proof method. But as I'm evaluating candidates, there's just something to having an expertise on one side of the ball that never goes away as long as that guy's got the headset. And I think that's a good thing for LSU. Now, Lane Kiffin checks all these boxes, obviously. But there are other guys that can do this. I mentioned Heupel. Like Jeff Brom is at Louisville, and wherever he goes, they tend to score points. That Louisville offense with Aiden O'Connor was really good at Purdue. Not Louisville. Purdue offense, Aiden O'Connell was really good that LSU played in the bowl game when he had left, and O'Connell left, and the number one wide receiver left, and their number one tight end had left. But they scored points at Purdue. They're scoring points at Louisville. It's Dan Lanning's going to have that defense at Oregon every year. You know the stories of Steve Spurrier and whatever, Saban, Kirby Smart. I looked at Kirby's defenses and fifth, 1st, 16th, 1st, 14th, 6th. Those are national numbers. Now I realize you look at the top guys in the sport, you're always going to get great results, and it's hard to find one of the top guys in the sport. But just something that if I was Verge Ausberry, I would keep in mind. To have, because if you have Les Miles as your coach, or you have Brian Kelly as your coach, or you have Dabo Swinney, who's a CEO guy. We talked yesterday about the Ravens hiring a special teams coach, and look, John Harbaugh's been pretty good there. But when you have a CEO of a head coach who is that reliant on coordinators, you have 100% liability and volatility. If you get the head coach in place that has his baby on one side of the ball, you kind of decrease that volatility by 50%. And in a place like LSU, if you can run a high baseline, you're going to spike more often than not. But LSU did spike under Brian Kelly on offense, and the defense fell out. And the defense was pretty good this year, and the offense is the second worst scoring offense in the SEC. Take away some of that volatility. Hire somebody who owns one side of the football. That's something that I would really like LSU to try to do. And you look around the country at a lot of different places, there's proof in that. It's one of those situations. I tell you all this all the time. Sometimes I go into the stat book and I start writing things down, and exactly what I think bears out in the numbers. And sometimes it reveals itself. This is what I thought. I went towards some names that popped in my head of like they do that for their program. And you look at what they've done. Heupel's elevated Tennessee. Kiffin has elevated Ole Miss. Ohio State, pretty damn good. Right now, Texas A&M looks pretty good. Now, I gave you the examples of the guys that didn't work out. Napier, Freeze, Aranda. Like, it's not a foolproof plan, but it's something I'd like LSU to look into. That's our opening drive here on this Thursday. When we come back, Andrew Ellis inside Arkansas talking Hogs next.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
One Bath and Closets. OneBathAndClosets.com is the website. David Vaughn and his team, 30 years redesigning and remodeling bathrooms and closets. If you haven't considered closet space, maybe it's time to do that. I told you the story at least every week that in my old house, when my now wife moved in, she looked around and goes, I can't put all my clothes up here. I never thought about it. Had enough room for me. She had stuff in the closet up in the attic. We were using what the kids' rooms became to store our stuff. Hallway closets, just wasn't functional. We could have called David. We knew we were moving when baby number 2 came, so didn't feel like that was a necessary call. But you don't have to move to get the closets that you need in your home. David Duvall is happy to do it. He will customize them to your specifications. If you're thinking, man, I have no idea what I want to do for Christmas this year for my wife, for my girlfriend, for whoever. Well, how about a new closet? Customized. David Duvall is happy to help you out with that. Go to onebathandclosets.com and look at the pictures of some of their fantastic work. You'll be thrilled. You'll be thrilled with them. They're going to do it right the first time and leave the competition behind. It's David Duvall at One Bath and Closets. You can find them online. onebathandclosets.com.
You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show, brought to you by Sagrera Farms.
Thursday show is brought to you by Sagrera Farms Premium Angus Beef. Rolling along, working towards the weekend. Appreciate you hanging out with us here on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge. Let's head up to Northwest Arkansas. Andrew Ellis covers the Hogs for Inside Arkansas. Good enough to give us a little bit of time today. Andrew, thanks for the time. How are you?
I'm great, man. I'm just absolutely buzzing for this epic showdown about to take place in Baton Rouge Saturday, man. I can't wait.
Last time we spoke, we were in Omaha. Everybody was fired up trying to win a national championship. Now everybody's just bored and sleeping and waiting till December so they can hire a coach. Let's talk about this Arkansas football team. Where did it go wrong early on for Sam Pittman?
Well, it went wrong whenever they decided to only have about 3 competent defensive linemen in the entire roster. Not having any depth on the defensive line up front, filling in some gaps in the secondary with some guys who had been benched at other SEC schools. Arkansas thought it'd be a great idea to bring them in. And so, honestly, I think when you look at this Razorback team, the talent level on defense is just not SEC quality whatsoever. You mix that in with some weird game management. Arkansas's unique ability to lose close games. It was going to be hard for them to overcome that. You look at Arkansas' schedule, I mean, there's a close loss on the road at Ole Miss. That's not a bad performance, but, one you weren't able to get done. You have a close loss on the road at Tennessee. Not a bad loss. You play A&M fairly close at home. There's been opportunities for Arkansas, but ultimately the offense, which has been good, hasn't been able to overcome all the deficiencies of the defense. And anytime the game gets close, Arkansas just kind of fails to show up.
What's the feeling on Taylon Green? I've listened to y'all a little bit, but I mean, he leads the nation in total offense, but they don't ever win any games. So what's the narrative around him?
So right, that you just kind of told the story in one sentence right there. Leads the nation in total offense, yet when the game gets ready to be won, you just don't have any confidence whatsoever. It really goes back to last year. He was a guy that didn't come in with a ton of buzz. I mean, he was he had basically been benched at Boise State. And so he wasn't like a guy in the transfer portal that Arkansas had to compete with all these other teams to get. You kind of knew once he got on campus, okay, there's some athleticism. They like him. They like his leadership. They like his arm. They think there's some things they can do with him. Of course, he's such a dynamic athlete. And so you saw some good things, but we noticed early on his first actual game as Arkansas's quarterback. They played UAPB in the opener, but they go on down to Stillwater, and he has a game where it was like 440 passing yards, 80 rushing yards, and then they just completely go silent in the fourth quarter, and that ended up being it. And so we saw that play out, and like you said, a ton of yards, but you don't win the game. And it's easy to kind of dismiss that when it happens once, but when it kind of keeps happening, it becomes a narrative that unfortunately for Talon, because he's a great kid and, I think he's a good player, it's going to end up being kind of the story of his career, that he was a fun guy to watch. He kind of is good enough to make you feel like you have a chance in every game, but it ultimately, people are going to remember you by the games that you win, not the games that you almost win. And unfortunately for Talon, he's been a part of a lot of great almost victories at the University of Arkansas.
What else does Arkansas do really well on offense outside of Talon Green?
Well, the offensive line, weirdly enough, one of the big narratives coming into the year when Sam Pittman was the head coach is the last couple of years, Arkansas's offensive line has struggled. And we all kind of felt like, hey, if Sam Pittman's going to keep his job, like, it's got to come through this offensive line. Like, that has to be something they have to figure out. And weirdly enough, they did figure it out. Like, if you had showed me some of the numbers from this offensive line preseason and been like, hey, this is what they're going to do. This is what they're going to do in the ground game. This is how they're going to do in pass protection. I would have been like, damn, so Arkansas's 5-3. What are they? Are they, competing for a bowl? What bowl are they going to go to? I would not have imagined it would go this poorly. But I would say that's certainly a strength of this team. I mean, Bobby Petrino we know how good he is as a play caller. We know when he has a quarterback that he trusts and can do some cool things with, there's a high ceiling on what he can accomplish. And this offensive line's giving them a chance to, make some plays downfield. They're very explosive. Their running back, Mike Washington, who I believe is in the top 3 of the SEC in rushing yards still. Maybe not a consistent bruiser power back, but he can when he finds a seam, he's dangerous. And so I would say just overall the explosive nature of this offense, going into a matchup with an LSU team that clearly doesn't have a ton of consistency on offense. I think if there's one area where I'm like, hey, Arkansas could have some success, I think making it a shootout and making it a battle of explosive offenses would be something that would probably suit Arkansas.
I would argue LSU's offense is really consistent. They score 17 points in every game. It's very, very consistent in that way. Just they don't do very much that's all that good. I just did a whole segment about how I'd like LSU's next head coach to have one side of the ball really figured out, because Brian Kelly didn't, Ed Ogeron didn't, Les Miles didn't. They haven't had it really since Saban in the early 2000s. Bobby Petrino's got one side of the ball figured out. Is he completely off the table as the next head coach at Arkansas? At least you would know your offense was going to be good every year.
You would think he would be off the table considering, just his entire tenure, his entire history as a head coach, and the fact that the last time he had a legitimate Division I head coaching job, it was Louisville, where they basically, had to fire him. It went all, went belly up after Lamar Jackson left. And not to mention how his Arkansas tenure ended back in the day.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people who still feel, a lot of animosity towards Bobby Petrino. The fact that he hasn't won a game as an interim coach, I feel like, especially those Auburn and Mississippi State games, where you kind of just had to have them. Like, if Arkansas was going to do anything with this season whatsoever, it was probably going to have to come in those 2 home games. After losing both of them, I don't really see a path. But we just got done doing our daily show, and we had people in the chat that were like, why are y'all dismissing Bobby? And so I honestly, I feel like it's still kind of on the table, especially depending on how many people tell Arkansas no, which, there's no limit to how many coaches can tell Arkansas no.
Well, the way things have gone around here the last 3 weeks, that may be the case in Baton Rouge as well. Like, how much are y'all paying attention to the fact that LSU's open, that Florida is open, that Auburn is open, Florida State may come open, Penn State is open? Like, is that a topic of conversation in Northwest Arkansas?
Oh, absolutely. Well, and it was a huge topic of conversation last year. Arkansas goes 6-6, which, at Arkansas doesn't sound like a time when you'd want to fire your coach, but the narrative, at least around us in the media and the way that everyone kind of felt, they almost fired him after the 2023 season when they go 4-8, and they had to put out, it's always bad when you put out a statement announcing that you're retaining your head coach. That's when you know your program's not necessarily headed for greatness. But they did that during the 2023 season. And so we went into last year being like, okay, is he going to have to go 6-6 to save his job? Is he going to have to go 7-5? And a lot of us really smart people, we made the case that, hey, he got Arkansas to a point of stability, which honestly was the goal of Sam Pittman's tenure. When he took over for Chad Morris, Arkansas was 4-20 the last 2 years. You just needed any form of stability, any form of anything. And Sam Pittman had this really big hip surgery at the end of last season that was already scheduled. And so a lot of us kind of felt like, hey, this is the perfect opportunity to kind of mutually part ways, do it amicably. You leave the program on stable ground. And the important part, last year, 0 SEC teams fired their coach. So you weren't going to get the greatest coach. You weren't going to get Nick Saban to come out of retirement, but hypothetically, you would be able to kind of have your choice of whatever up-and-coming candidate. Now I look around at LSU, which is undeniably a better job than Arkansas. Auburn, which has been a disaster lately, but still historically viewed as a better job than Arkansas. Florida, no doubt about it. Like, that's a better job than Arkansas. Not to mention Penn State. Maybe they end up hiring Drinkwitz, so that opens up Missouri. Perhaps Kiffin bounces. Maybe that opens up Ole Miss. There's a very clear path to Arkansas kind of being the odd man out here. That is very much on our radars. That is not lost on us.
Is there a name that sounds good to y'all at this point?
James Franklin sounds tremendous to me. I love that idea. It's funny when Arkansas. So it's September 28th. That's when Arkansas fired Sam Pittman. At that point in time, if you had asked me for my top 3 candidates, it would have probably looked a lot different than my top 3 candidates then, especially because I didn't know James Franklin was going to be an option. And so he's kind of the guy that if I feel, we always hear this terminology. I'm sure you guys are going to say this a ton over the next few weeks. You got to make them say no. You got to make someone say no. I feel like James Franklin for Arkansas, that should be their guy. And honestly, you mentioned all these other jobs open. Maybe James Franklin will end up being a candidate at LSU or a candidate at Auburn. Personally, I feel like a lot of those schools, LSU in particular, like I don't think LSU would hire James Franklin. Hey, a little too Kelly, but like ideas. You can correct me if I'm wrong there, but like I feel like James Franklin actually is the kind of perfect guy that you could pitch him on this idea of it being a reclamation project, of him getting his career back on track. And I don't necessarily know if he's going to be a candidate at all these top openings in the country, because I'd imagine, a lot of programs have their sights set on more up-and-coming, younger guys that are a little bit more flashy names. But I feel like Franklin is the guy you got to make say no. And then I really like Golish at South Florida. He's kind of been my guy through this whole thing. I don't know if he's a genius or not, but he is. If you're going to go the up-and-coming route, I feel like Golish, you could do a lot worse.
Last one here. We appreciate your time here on this Thursday. More excitement. I know basketball's actually playing, which generates a lot of excitement. More excitement for this John Calipari team or Dave Van Horn's team in the spring?
So for me, the answer is always going to be baseball.
Yeah.
I'm a baseball guy. It's always I'm always going to kind of have my eye on the diamond a little bit. I am very excited about John Calipari's squad. They had a tough loss Saturday on the road at Michigan State, but I think there's a really high floor for John Calipari's team. I mean, they've got 2 dynamite freshmen. They've got a returning core in the roster. Like, they're going to be at least pretty good. But as you guys know, like, we're not going to be happy in Fayetteville until Dave Van Horn gets that chip. And since you guys ruined that so clearly last year, we're just going to have to run it back, man. I like the roster they've got. I think they did a good job in the transfer portal, filling in some gaps. I think Dave Van Horn's going to have, at worst, a top 5 to 10 team this year. And
his schedule is beautiful in SEC play. So something tells me we'll see y'all up in Nebraska this summer. That sound good?
Sounds great to me, man. Definitely looking forward to that.
All right. Appreciate it, Andrew.
Absolutely. Thank you. Appreciate you guys.
Andrew Ellis, Inside Arkansas, good enough to give us some time here on this Thursday. We'll come back and talk some Saints, but let me tell you about Sagrera Farms Premium Angus Beef, because they bring you our Thursday shows each and every week. It's the middle of November. If you're thinking about getting some clients something great for the holidays, don't want to go with that same old bottle of wine that you always go with, same box of pralines you always go with, how about some prime Angus beef for your clients, for your customers? You can do it. Sean is happy to help you with it. You can buy a side, you can buy a quarter, buy a whole cow, depending on how many boxes you want to put together. Sean will help you. He'll go ahead and package it for you and help you with every single step of the way. You can get those clients, those customers, prime fillets, prime ribeyes, flank steaks, skirt steaks, ground beef for burgers. It's all phenomenal. We've had it at the Palmer House all summer and fall long. It has been a game changer for us. Just pop it right out of the freezer. It's ready to roll that night on the grill. We love it. It's prime Angus beef, some of the top beef in the country. If you would like to entertain customers, entertain clients with a gift that will be different and awesome this holiday season, call Sean, 225-719-1723. It's 225-719-1723. He's happy to help you, and got to age at 45 days, so it's time to get that call into Sean right now. Sagrera Farms brings you our Thursday shows. We'll come back and talk some Saints next.
The Hunt Palmer Show. This is the Hunt Palmer Show, brought to you by Sagrera Farms.
Chat with Chris Blair, voice of the Tigers. in hour number 2. Luke Johnson with the Saints as well at 2:30, so about 55 minutes from now. I want to talk about the Saints in this segment. Ross Jackson's got a piece up LouisianaSports.net talking about the Saints and in the offensive front. It is a good idea. It is sound judgment to try to build with your offensive line. We know that the Saints, in their heyday, back when they were as good as anybody in the sport and won the Super Bowl, you did so with the best guard tandem in the NFL. Now, you had an undersized quarterback who needed to work from the pocket, and you had two incredible players in Jari Evans, Carl Nicks right there at your guards. And you had quality tackles as well. And so when you're Mickey Loomis and you're this front office that saw that and saw that pay off, it's good to continue to invest in that offensive line, but you got to hit on the investments, obviously. And it's interesting to look back, say, 15 months ago and look at what we were talking about with the Saints offensive line and how big a mess it was. Because at that point, like, Trevor Penning hadn't played. He was a first-round pick but had been hurt. Weren't really sure if he could play left tackle or if he maybe was a guard or if you're going to move him. You had questions about what the future of Ryan Ramczyk was. He wasn't playing. We know now that he was never going to play again. And you had Cesar Ruiz and Eric McCoy, very young players that you were taken early in the draft. And there was just a lot of – it was in flux. It was in flux in a big way. And you've now seen some things transpire that have made things a little bit clear, but there are still muddy waters. Like, Ramczyk moved on, obviously. You tried Trevor Penning at right tackle. You tried to move him in at left guard. Ultimately, you knew that was going to be a failure, and you traded him off for a bag of footballs. And so you've invested back-to-back first-round picks at your tackle spots, and you still don't know a ton. Fuaga was good last year as a rookie. You've moved him, and he's hurt. Now you look at Banks, and he looks pretty good, but it's early. Ruiz looks like the worst guard in the NFL, quite literally. And McCoy has now missed big chunks of 2 straight seasons. And you look at the resources you've dumped into that, and it's by far the most in terms of draft capital that you've used. And you don't have any money to spend in free agency. Like, that doesn't exist. All you have is draft capital, and there it all is. And I can't come up with anything outside of a healthy Eric McCoy, which doesn't currently exist, that's solid. And Ross laid out the numbers. You're bottom half of the league in sacks given up. You're 32nd in pass block win rate and 27th in run block win rate. So you're the worst in the NFL in pass blocking, and you're 5th worst in run blocking. You're getting penalized. 10th most in the NFL in false start penalties. Worse on holding. You're tied for 4th. Not only are you missing blocks, you're getting penalized for them. You look at the ground game, 3.7 yards per carry. That's 30th in the NFL. Only 2 teams worse. So any way you chop this up, this has been a miss on the offensive front. Now, it can improve. Banks is young and is playing and looks the part. I have no problem with Kelvin Banks right now. I think I would bet on Fuaga right now. Now, he's got to stay healthy. Big dudes, that heavy, that many collisions, injuries happen. And if you could just get Eric McCoy to play 15 games a year instead of 6, that's a good starting point. I don't know what Dylan Radins is going to give you the rest of the year. It'd be nice if Will Clapp was healthy. He's not. It'd be nice if Nick Saldivari had worked out. He is not. He's hurt. And injuries are going to happen, but you look around and it just hasn't clicked. And if you continue to sink early round picks into this that fail, like, it just continues to set you back. The more important discussions we're having here are not about matchups Sunday to Sunday. They're about the future. And what do I always say? I'm always talking about the next good Saints team, the next good Saints team, the next good Saints team. And I can't get Demario Davis on that team. I can't get Alvin Kamara on that team. Tyron's gone. Rashid Shaheed is now gone. I don't think Taysom Hill's on that team. But these offensive linemen need to be on that team. And they're not helping right now because they either play very poorly, like Reese has, or they're hurt. And it's just a big bummer. And it is even more of a bummer when you look at the statistics. You can watch the game on Sunday. I'm watching the game on Sunday. You're watching the game on Sunday. It's not great. Like, they've had some times where they've gotten the run game going. They blocked well last Sunday. It wasn't great on the ground, but it was okay. And they gave Shuck enough time. Now, he improvised, and he's athletic, and he can do some of those things. So could Rattler to an extent. And a lot of the times, Rattler was getting the ball out really quickly. So some of these numbers probably could be worse. But you're going to be breaking in a new quarterback, whether it's Shuck this year or somebody you take in this draft. And you've got to get this part straightened out because you can't get anything done if you can't win up front. You just can't. Like, the Panthers are actually winning games with Bryce Young as a bottom 4-5 quarterback in the NFL. I don't think anybody would argue against that. Why are they winning games? Because they can hand the ball off and run for 200 yards. They've got a defensive front that's doing a pretty good job. They've got one of the better corners in the NFL. But the main thing for the offense is you're doing enough up front to run the ball to take some pressure off of him. I think that ship's probably sailed for this year, but hopefully Fuaga comes back. You're in the bye. Maybe he comes back. Banks improves. You see something out of Radens. And then Shuck gets comfortable behind them. And then next year you move forward with McCoy's still not old. Like, there's still good football in front of him. So I'm not giving up on this unit. Like, I'm struggling with some of the other units on the field in terms of age, production. Like, it's not good. I don't love wide receiver. I'm not feeling great about running back because Kamara is getting up in age. Linebacker, Davis is playing so good. But, again, Father Time's going to win that battle at some point. I'm struggling at defensive tackle with Brzee. Edge, like, Young's playing great. But you're going to move on from Cam Jordan eventually, and you need something beyond that. And you've already dealt Foskey, like, cut him. Like, there are other positions that, like, I don't have a great answer. I can find an answer on offensive line. I can get there on that unit. But I'm hopeful that the back half of this season allows that group to show some improvement. Show a little. I'm giving up on Ruiz, but tackles, yes. I can see it. Left guard with Radens, maybe. You got to hope because I understand where they're looking at trying to get that offensive line to be the foundation of the team. It has worked previously with the Hall of Fame quarterback behind it. And you've hit on really good picks. Like, you did a great job getting Taron Armstrong. That was awesome. Ramczyk was a slam dunk pick. McCoy is very good. Like, they have hit on some of these in the past. But the ones out there right now, I got to see some more. So that's a look at offensive line. Ross has got a really good piece up at LouisianaSports.net right now if you want to go check that out for free. When we come back, LSU on the hardwood tonight. 3 things I'm looking for LSU and Florida International, including a really funny note on who Florida International's only win is against. I found it funny, at least. I'll tell you about it coming up next.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
Genesis of Baton Rouge. GenesisofBatonRouge.com is the website. Every car that's on the lot is online at GenesisofBatonRouge.com. Maybe you're in the market for a vehicle for Christmas. Maybe spring of next year. Maybe you've got eyes on it. You know that your lease is coming up somewhere, and you're thinking right now is the time to dip my toe into the water and see what might be next. Just put Genesis on your list. It is a luxury brand at a reasonable price. You will be blown away at the sales staff over there. You will be blown away at the facility over there. And then you'll get behind the wheel and you'll know the difference. Like, it is a luxury brand, stylish, all the bells and whistles you're looking for, incredible safety features. Every model in the line is an IHH top safety pick. All of them. So get on by and see them. Airline at PQ. Or let them come to you where you can test drive remotely. It's Genesis of Baton Rouge. Everything you need is online at GenesisofBatonRouge.com.
You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show, brought to you by Sagrera Farms.
Closing up hour number 1 here on this Thursday, brought to you by Sagrera Farms Premium Angus Beef. LSU and Florida International tonight from the Assembly Center. Florida International comes in 1-1 on the season. They got beat by 30 by Nebraska. Nebraska made 17 of 34 threes the other day, which is 50%. Pretty salty shooting effort there. But their one win, I found some humor in. Of course, Florida International, their name. Their one win against Florida National, which I never heard of, but interesting matchup there between Florida International and Florida National. It's a bad Florida International team. LSU's first 5 or 6 non-conference games are against teams that are not very good at all, and I expect LSU to come out and dominate tonight inside the PMAC. But there are some things I want to see from this LSU team in this game tonight that I highlighted in a piece over at LouisianaSports.net. Max McKinnon really came out guns blazing in that first game. He was 6 or 7 from the floor. He was 4 of 5 from 3, led LSU with 19 points. And it's a guy who I think they're going to lean on for some scoring, and they're certainly going to lean on for some floor spacing. I need him to shoot the ball. He's a 40% three-point shooter last year at Portland. I need him to shoot the ball a little bit better. He was bad in their game against UNO, missed all 5 field goals, only had 1 assist. Just was never really involved in the flow of the offense. Marquel Sutton picked up the slack for him. He made 4 threes in that game, and that's really good to see. He's going to play the 3 for LSU, and I'd like both of those guys to show the ability to shoot the ball, to stretch defenses a little bit, to give DJ Thomas the lanes he needs to drive. But I'd like to see McKinnon get back in action tonight against Florida International and knock down some shots. I think he's an interesting player for LSU, a 6'7" 2-guard that can really shoot and show the ability to put the ball on the floor. I won't know how that quickness and length and ability to drive translates against SEC teams, but I know that shooting translates because you just got to fill it up. And I'd like to see McKinnon shoot it a little bit better in the game tonight. LSU's done a good job shooting free throws thus far. They're at 75% as a team. Mike Nwoku and Pablo Tamba have combined for the majority of those misses. Tamba's just 2 for 6. And then Mike Nwoku has missed 4 as well. So that's 8 of the 14 misses on the team for the season are from those 2 guys. DJ Thomas is 8 for 8. I love to see that from a point guard who's got to help you close out games. McKinnon is 5 for 5 from the free throw line. You love to see that. Even Robert Miller, big 6'10" sophomore, is 8 for 10 from the line early on. That's something that is the same against Kentucky as it is against Florida International. It's the same against Florida as it is against Florida International, just making free throws. And you want to be a good free throw shooting team. And early on, LSU's doing a good job of that. So I want to see that continue. Again, that's not something that I'm concerned about. It's just there are very few things I can take from LSU throttling these teams by 25 points. Like it just is what it is. Free throw shooting is one of them. Like, so keep shooting the ball well from free throws. If you're looking for something specifically about Florida International in this game, they've got a couple of posts with some length. Hamed Olayinka is their leading scorer. He's 16 for 20 on the season from the floor. He's 6'9", averaged 18.5 points per game. And so you'll see Jalen Reed and Mike Nwoku dealing with him. They've also got Eric Dabami, who is a 6'10", 235-pound freshman who is a big body. He's been a bad shooter this year and hasn't done well offensively, but he's a big body. So it's not – sometimes these smaller schools come in to a game and they start a 6'7" forward, and that's like the biggest guy on the floor. You saw that in the game against Charleston State. That's not the case in this game. So just, I mean, look, I expect Mike Nwoku to dominate him the way that he dominated a UNO team that had some height on it, but he's just too big, too strong at 265 and too athletic, and he destroyed UNO, and I expect him to have a really strong showing tonight. But I'm curious who guards the 6'9" Olayinka, who's done a really good job from the floor for this Florida International team. Game's at 7 o'clock. You can watch on SEC Network Plus, and certainly you can get and buy, and there are tickets available over there. You can listen to the game on actually 100.7 The Tiger tonight, not on Eagle 98.1, because on Eagle tonight you'll have the Frank Wilson show, as it were, with Chris Blair from TJ Ribs. Chris will be with us in 20 minutes to talk about that. So if you are driving around and you pop on 98.1, you go, I thought they were playing basketball tonight. 100.7 The Tiger is where you can find that game tonight for LSU and Florida International. Tigers looking to move to 3-0. If you're thinking, when are they going to play somebody that's any good? 2 weeks away. In 2 weeks, LSU will have a stretch of non-conference games. It will be Drake from Niceville, Florida, then either Georgia Tech or DePaul, then Boston College, then Texas Tech, then SMU. So that's 5 games against real opponents that you're 2 weeks away from. But right now, looking at different rotations, trying to make sure you get some of the younger players reps. You're trying to gel a team with a ton of new faces together. That's the goal over the course of these games. I don't expect LSU to have any issues at all in the game tonight. You never know. You start missing shots, another team gets hot from three. Anything can happen, but Nebraska dispatched this team pretty easily, and Nebraska I don't think is ticketed for the Final Four this year, so I don't anticipate LSU having a lot of issues in the game tonight. 7 o'clock, pregame at 6:30. That's it for hour number 1. Missed any of the show today in the first hour, catch it on demand. I opened the show talking about an identity on one side of the ball for LSU's new football coach. You can find that at Hunt on LSU. Also a column on LouisianaSports.net. Also talked to Andrew Ellis from Inside Arkansas, scouting report on the Hogs, a little bit of Saints talk as well. You can find that at Hunt on Saints. Take a time out, come back with some LSU-Arkansas matchup preview. Chris Blair in 20 minutes. It's a Thursday edition of the Hunt Palmer Show.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
Swing Easy Golf Club in Baton Rouge, swingeasygcbr.com. Excited next week to tell you all about something that's coming from us here over at Swing Easy Golf Club. I'm not sure how it's going to go, but I'm looking forward to it. But that's to find out next week. As far as this goes right now, this weekend, get on over to Swing Easy on Segan near Perkins. You can hit some golf shots, hang out with friends, work on your game. It's a great place to work on your game, and you can do so quickly in a climate-controlled area. You're inside. Don't have to worry about the cold. Don't have to worry about the hot. Don't have to worry about dead grass or scuffed golf balls. Don't have to worry about crowded range or paying for all the range balls there. You just hop in, work on your game. You can get on the driving range setting. You can see your carry distance, see your ball speed. You can see your club impact the golf ball with a slow motion camera there that's on every single swing. It's a great place to work on your game in a climate-controlled area. So get on by and see them. Segan at Perkins, swingeasygcbr.com. It's Swing Easy Golf Club, swingeasygcbr.com.